I was walking around my campus the other day and I met a middle-aged man with glasses. He introduced himself and said that he was from a certain South Asian country and then mentioned that the lady next to him, who looks like she's just around my age, is his daughter. Since I also looked foreign, he struck up a conversation. And then he told me that she too, like me, was studying abroad. Was studying. He then asked me a few more questions, like if I had family here in Europe and what I plan on doing after finishing my degree, all that stuff. I candidly answered every question he asked me, which were so focused on, of course, family, and perhaps even tiptoeing on the thing I told him about moving away from home alone. Which isn't new entirely. Like, I didn't think much of it, but obviously after that conversation, I did. Anyway, I remember one of my answers being something along the lines of, the better your family has treated you, the more reasons there are to miss them. Which was in response to what he said about his daughter. He took visible pride in her coming right back home after finishing her degree. I recall the sentiment of missing home as subjective because I've been hearing it from my classmates in the program that I'm in. Like, they also all moved here alone. Some go on video calls and talk about what happens in their family back home, and they consequentially kept on missing home. Others, they're just glad to be here, seeing it as a fresh start. It isn't a novel experience, these mixed feelings and expectations when you move to a foreign country alone. Then after this, he finally said something that wasn't a question anymore. Without family, for whom are you working? I just smiled. Partly because things were far too complicated to explain succinctly in such a brief encounter and with someone I just met, and partly because backstage, my mind went straight to the ingrained ideal of having to be so family-oriented, like in the barest traditional sense. We tend to value family as the last line of support through genuinely tough times. We must stay and obey for practical reasons outside of respect, like safety and security. But if we're being honest here, it is the quality of those family relationships that ultimately matters the most in the long run. Meanwhile, friendships, which are a close second to family, play an important role in providing emotional support. But unlike family, it is often the quantity of friendships that could be deemed sufficient in contributing to one's subjective well-being. Either way, we can safely assume that presence matters. Traditionally, we're expected to practice some sort of value adjacent to filial piety in the eastern parts of Asia and seva in the southern parts of Asia, which just reinforces the norm of maintaining close family ties rooted in respect and care for our elders. At its best, it's about gratitude and honor, and at its worst, it edges into blind obedience. Ideally, this value is meant to be something more than just parental respect. It's about honoring those who gave us life by striving to live one that's worthy of honor too. It's usually the elders who hold onto these traditional values the tightest, which also happens to give them power and authority. This is something I noticed while living with my own council of elders. And needless to say that father, or should I say or call him uncle, took me back, and then he reminded me of the same principles from those same people. Even some of my friends and acquaintances here who came from Eastern, specifically Asian backgrounds, are seeing caveats in this idea of traditional family obligation in more ways than one. Not saying that family, can be evil. Maybe it can be, but just heavy on the obligation part. As times change, the expectations of staying close to your parents, getting married, and even having kids still remain just like it had for years.
But we're honoring her. It's tradition.
It's your tradition, not mine. Thank you for having me.
And though not universal, but in many, many parts of the world, you're still obliged to be good to your family, whether or not they have been good to you. This is especially true in cultures where blood is considered so thick, it feels almost unbreakable, like the pitch drop experiment. It might take years or even decades to finally separate itself and fall. Unlike any liquid, no matter how viscous, family does not come in a fixed shape. Its definition is expanding to something more than just blood or people, and while the physical or emotional absence of one can feel empty, the space that it doesn't occupy just means that there's more room to accommodate the possibility of one. That is, if your glass is half full. But I gotta hand it to Uncle. When we do work, we gotta work for someone else, like some bigger purpose. Love and labor are never selfish. For some, that someone else is within family, blood ties and all. But for others, and in cases such as mine, that someone else would simply be your future self, along with everyone else in it. Because at the end of the day, how we define family is ours. And that finding and having a sense of family, no matter how we define it, helps shape our sense of well-being in a much stronger, more vital sense. Well-being is a multifaceted concept. It's more than just a measure or an outcome or an expectation or the mere sum of its parts. Rather, it's a perpetual state of flourishing in areas non-linear to each other, including not only mental and physical health, but also happiness and life satisfaction, meaning and purpose, character and virtue, and close social relationships. In support of the practice of flourishing, a 2017 Perspectives article produced a chart identifying 4 social pathways of what affects the well-being, or what the article has referred to as major determinants of flourishing. The 4 pathways, family, work, education, and religious community, are correlated with positive outcomes, including happiness and life satisfaction, physical and mental health, and more. While not everyone grew up with people they would call family per se, the vast majority of us did. It doesn't have to be the family who you had at birth, your biological ones, or a foster family. Like, it can also be composed of separate people that you feel at home with. And this is kind of thanks to most societies having customs and frameworks in place to ensure that children are cared for by an adult guardian, whether through parents, or like extended relatives or other forms of guardianship. But as the child grows up, like, what comes next? Traditionally, marriage forms the unity of family. People meet each other, tie the knot, and multiply. Marriage has been widely correlated to a higher life satisfaction, greater happiness, better health, and even longevity. Put personal growth, lower levels of loneliness, and better financial outcomes among others in that list too. But marriage isn't all that great because it's the only milestone in a relationship with a possibility of divorce.
Divorce, babe, divorce.
Divorce is then found to be conversely associated with poorer everything, an almost complete 180.
It was just there. Always there. I eventually had to change schools, take less money, crappy studio apartment, forced to work with Mr. Hill.
Whew, I feel that.
And now, I have several ulcers. All because I dated a coworker.
But like marriage not being all good, divorce isn't all that bad either. Like, sometimes people divorce or separate out of love, a shared ultimate final act of love that is the respect for one another. Divorce shouldn't be where love and happiness end. I feel like these terms sound too formal or too serious, but I can see marriage as a stand-in for like building relationships in general, romantic, platonic, familiar, and more. A willing commitment that holds the promise of stability and companionship. That's why it just affects the person in a positive way. Meanwhile, divorce can represent breakups or a falling apart, an erosion that creeps in, a love lost. Both conscious choices for something to change, like fundamentally, and both things that could never be what they once were. As always, times have changed. Not as many people opt for marriage or kids at a certain age anymore in this economy and social climate. But what happens is something far more beautiful. Like, many people are discovering the value of found family with friends, communities, and partners that we choose for ourselves. These relationships can provide the same and sometimes an even stronger sense of belonging and support that traditional family structures were meant to offer, regardless of any kind of distance. Moving abroad, I can't help but feel nostalgic for something that happened less than 2 years ago. The times when I could hug and laugh and meet up with my friends or found family in just 1 to 3 business days. Sometimes when things get really, really tough or just things just implode on itself, it's express delivery. Now that we're physically apart and in different time zones, we become essentially Tamagotchis, virtually living where the sun doesn't shine, and then just some text and small updates on the phone here and there just to keep in touch. Although convenient, like I'm not complaining, it just feels less. That inexplicable feeling of virtual connection being subpar to the real thing is not a novel experience either. It's no secret that the paradox of virtual distance, that is being so close yet so far away, can make us lonely. The pandemic, which happened 5 years ago, 5 years ago, by the way, has primed us for this globalized virtual third space that slowly became the main stage for social interactions. Like, even before the pandemic, with the social media boom, that we didn't even know what to do with it. Like, we were still vulnerable to getting lost in the sauce. Despite being virtually closer than ever, current research suggests that the patterns of how we use the internet increases loneliness due to the decline of the quality of the social connection. Okay, you know what? Maybe I should just hang a plaque of Paracelsus with his iconic quote on the wall just to save myself all the trouble of repeating what I want to say every damn time. I keep on wanting to point out that it is the dose that makes the poison. Like, too much of anything, including unsupervised use of the internet, unmonitored virtual spaces, like literally anything in purpose, method, and time equals bad. While it can provide a real sense of connection, that same connection can also feel not genuine enough. A two-dimensional video call in Discord is all we've got until we can fax real-time holograms. Digital connection provides a convenience that doesn't always guarantee a sense of closeness. Once something is normalized, we tend to overlook the impact that it has in our lives. That is, if we even notice it in the first place. The digital space has long been our default platform for socializing with family, work, friends, and maybe that's the problem. We've grown too comfortable with living most of our lives in that shared space. For everything. We've unpacked our things, made ourselves comfy, all with a solid plan to stay. And at this point, we can possibly mistake accessibility for intimacy, right?
Sign you up to something that helps. It will let you speak to him.
Whether we've noticed it or not, we've generally been lonelier than ever before. Our social capital has been declining as we get more globalized, more mobile, and more individualistic in a sense. In my household, Christmas used to be fun. Of course, Christmas used to be fun when we were kids, right? Like, lots of cousins and other relatives would come to this one big sleepover at, like, grandma's place. Like, there were games, prizes, singing and dancing, and lots of eating. I was conditioned to believe that when there was family, there was like a celebration, and vice versa. We all didn't go to like one single house for nothing. Then as we grew up, we couldn't help but grow apart. Christmases were then spent on phones, celebrations, quite frankly, didn't mean family anymore. And what was once taught to little me had to be rewritten and then retaught again and then relearned. Now, I don't know if you've also experienced this, where we stop growing up with the people that we once grew up with, if that makes sense. And then at some point realize that we may have taken our relationships for granted. I used to tell myself that I was young, like I didn't know any better, and that relationships were a two-way street, and no one party should be the sole party to blame. People leave for reasons other than seeking greener pastures, and sometimes people even leave to keep love intact. But in the end, there's almost always a looming sense of loneliness at every loss. And the problem with loneliness is more than just being left in isolation. Isolation is most commonly referred to as the separation or lack of relation from anything and anyone, while loneliness, on the other hand, is an emotional disconnection. It's hard to manufacture a guaranteed and/or quick cure for loneliness, which has been informally regarded as an epidemic that still lasts up to this day and possibly for years to come if we don't do anything about it. Social isolation and loneliness have been recognized as global problems by the World Health Organization. The WHO Commission on Social Connection has just released a report titled From Loneliness to Social Connection, Charting a Path to Healthier Societies. This highlights loneliness as a social health issue that harms many areas of well-being and that it consequentially deserves the same urgency as physical and mental health. The report, which is free to download on their website if you want to check it out, and it's also linked down below, includes reflections from the people that they interviewed. One expert has shared that the answer to combat the resulting unhappiness from this social health detriment might simply be connection. Connection that comes with actively choosing happiness, accompanied by peer support, is harmonious with personal and social growth. Another has shared that the power to stop this whole loneliness pandemic lies within us. We must stay curious and cultivate a culture of curiosity in order to genuinely connect and uplift those around us. Loneliness happens to disappear at the effort of a connection, so we must move. Interested people ask questions, and that interest is undoubtedly the first step, if not one of, to real understanding. By showing genuine curiosity, we open ourselves to potentially meaningful relationships, and then we can start to practice empathy, inching closer to truly understanding and then being understood, and then maybe forgetting that loneliness used to exist within us in the first place. I believe that the world and our relationships are mirrors. Someone who is brave enough to show vulnerability deserves another who is just the same. And I could only say deserve because we can't always get what we want unless we live by the Gina Linetti method. But since life does not guarantee fairness and that meritocracy is a sham. Who said that?
Not merit-based at all, but who wants to live in a meritocracy?
The humans in it who are also trying to connect in this human experience will eventually respond to effort and intention as long as they too see it in themselves to connect. Birds of a feather make a good feather duster or something. One must take initiative to be the change that they want to see in this world, and some might think that changing into someone vulnerable is silly or that it seems fake to practice it. But when someone who, through the virtue of time, gains the reputation of being genuine, who is genuinely trying, the world will eventually respond. I do believe that you give the world the opportunity to reflect back when you become it yourself. I also believe that rude people deserve someone who's just as rude or even more by virtue of reciprocity. Anyway, and then I wonder, is the most effective way to proactively address loneliness through actions that we can do right now, this instant, ASAP, as a social unit, mainly just soft skills? My unprofessional yet based opinion is yes. Family, as we know, can be biological. Initially from the people we were born to who could give us an inherited sense of safety. But family can also be constructed. That is, if you're lucky enough to meet the parts that you could work with. One can have either or both or even more, and that makes us rich. Rich because we can find it in ourselves to be vulnerable enough to build healthy, long-lasting relationships. Rich because we can value those relationships with honesty and care. Rich because we give, earn, and propagate love and respect to and from those around us. I'd like to think of family as an intentional choice, not just an obligation or something that you're stuck with, but something remade all the time, made new. So whenever someone reaches out to you, cherish it. When someone makes plans with you, remember that there is gratitude in being included. And that when you have the opportunity to hang out face to face, do we even have a choice? There are always things that we have yet to know about people like others and ourselves. And that the key to learning more about this is just being present in the moment. And now that I chose this, I chose to work on myself far away from my biological family, far away from people who were once strangers, but who have gone through enough with me to become my found family. And yet, surrounded by new persons I have yet to cherish life with, I now have an answer. For whom am I doing this? After several minutes, like this whole thing, and studies and questions and all that, like I can say that it's for my family back at home, for my found family here and there, for my future self, and then for the family that I have yet to meet. Okay, since you're still here, if you happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you want to support this channel, just click the subscribe button. I've yet to get this channel monetized, so it would be a big help. Yeah, that's all. Take care and be well. Bye.